Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another Supercoach Insider podcast. My name is Swiz, and as always, well, I can't say as always, I do apologize straight off for not being here for the last couple of weeks. My work schedule has been all over the shop, so deep apologies for that. Very hard to do Supercoach content when you are working right in prime time for doing this sort of stuff. So I do apologize for that, but it's great to be back. As always, check us out on all our social media platforms, in particular Twitter and YouTube. Thank you to everybody who's been getting in touch as normal, asking about their teams. It is that sort of time of year where it does sort of die down for a lot of people. It's been really busy talking to a lot of community people out there in the community because it is EPL season. So that is kicking off to 3:30 a.m. I think Australia time. We need to lock in our teams. So I'm going to try to just do a little bit of a video on what is happening there. And then in regards to other footy coming up, we do have the AFLW season. So I will put out something in regards to what I'm looking at there over the next few days. But yeah, as I said, there's been a few comments about people out there with their Supercoach content creators probably not putting as much as early in the season, but that's probably because a lot of people don't have trades left. And right now, my last trade is coming in very handy because we are at the situation where it is Carnage Week. And there's been that many injuries. So for me, what's been going on, 25.82 last week. I was pretty well treading water for the last 3 weeks before that. I'd get into a Saturday night feeling really good about my score, and then some player that I didn't have would absolutely go off, and then on my players would absolutely stink it up. So even with Bont captain last week and having Kernell, I was still pretty happy with that. So 6,551 overall. So yeah, it's not going to be that top 1,000 this year, which is disappointing, but I haven't given up hope for at least top 5,000. And if I could sneak into that top sort of 2%, well, it's still not a dreadful year. My tipping went downhill last week, just the 3. It was a disastrous, but I'm still 267th overall in that and leading a few cash leagues. So I'm pretty happy with that. So such my Supercoach season hasn't been going as well. My tipping has been going pretty well and up until last week. So did drop some ranking points, which was a bit disappointing. Okay, in regards to my team, before we get into you guys, and thank you so much. And yes, Scotty, straight off there, mate. Great, thank you. It's good to be back. Global, yes, mate. Yeah, that shirt, mate. Yeah, well, it is EPL season, and of course, I'm going to wear my City shirt, mate. It's loud and proud, especially because we should do once again pretty well this season. All right, in regards to my team, so one trade has been needed, and that was Mr. Sheasel leaving my side, which was disappointing. I don't think he'll play next week since it's an away game, and realistically, North have nothing to play for. So keeping Zach Fisher all this time has worked out extremely well for me. So I had a decision between bringing in Sinclair, which I've got sitting there, Lockie Whitfield, who I really like, but he's been playing great on that half-back line. Potentially could score quite well because just the way Fremantle do chip it around. But I feel like they could potentially try to block the corridor a little like they did against the Swans a few weeks ago, which may, upset how he plays. Geordie Clark and Sicily were probably my 4. And I don't know if I'd probably have a 5th, it'd be Nick Newman. So let's get that out of the way, because Sheasel, if you've got a couple trades up your sleeve or one, he's the one that you've got to move. It's a shame, but he's the premium player and you need a premium to replace him. So they're all good options. Sicily is fantastic because he is playing Richmond and then North Melbourne next week. His track record against the Tigers is unreal. I think it's like 140 the last 3 games. So it's hard to go wrong. Like, this is probably the period where you can probably play a pod too, especially obviously if you're further back in the rankings, or having a look at sort of those league matchups too. So that all does come into it. So a bit of food for thought. But yeah, Sicily against a undermanned Richmond forward line should have a bit of a field day there. His last 3, I did have that up there a second ago, against Richmond have been 147, 171, and 141. So he's definitely tempting me instead of Sinclair, just because Sinclair probably does have a slight tougher draw, but I'll just worry about Sis for there. And because we know what the Hawks situation is, so Hawthorn do need to keep winning to make the 8 and assure that. They should beat Richmond. They should beat North Melbourne. But the way footy's going, there's nothing locked in at the moment. But yeah, he's a guy who's leading his team, and we know he can go massive on any given week. So you've got to definitely consider Sicily for your back line. And it's something that I may potentially get, Kev, consider as the day gets, the next couple of days go on, especially because, the Saints Geelong game, I don't have to necessarily make that decision until tomorrow night. So yeah, I've got a little bit to consider there, but yeah, so Sicily's the one for me that I am strongly considering. If it's not Sicily, the one I've got in the moment is Sinclair. His last few weeks have just been absolutely brilliant, and because the Saints have been playing at Marvel, he plays really well at Marvel. Last 3 rounds, average of 121, and the 5 rounds is 118. The probably little issue there is he is playing the Cats this week. He has scored 3 tons in a row against the Cats. He scores against Carlton a little bit less. He's had that 99 and 105, but he did have a 150 at Marvel a couple of years ago. And his Marvel scores are just through the roof. So pretty well much from that bye period. He's gone 147, 143, 110, 140, 99, 142, and 123 at his games at Marvel. So if he was playing Geelong down in Geelong, I wouldn't even consider it. If he was playing at the G, I wouldn't consider it. But his Marvel scores, it just suits him like no other player. So he definitely has to be either the best or the second best option coming into this weekend. And then Carlton, just because they're so on demand this week, potentially next week as well, there could be some extra points floating around. So I think Sinclair is somebody that needs to be 1 or 2 on your radar this week. And he's still quite a bit of a pod. Like overall, he's just in 11% of teams without even going into the top 1% here. So if I have a little look at 1%, I don't know where Sinclair sitting, 37% of the top 1%. So he is a bit of a pod there. I think there are a few people more will jump on him as the weekend goes on, because still 72% of the top 1% own Sheasel. So yeah, definitely can get a great option there. The other 3 I'll cover before I get into some of these questions. I know quite a few of these questions are about Sheasel. So Lockie Whitfield, as I said, can't be discounted. His form since the bye, since a few people traded him out, has been unreal, especially his home games. He has put up a couple of games of 134. He also had a 152 at Manuka this week's game. Fremantle, the problem is he hasn't necessarily scored in his career against Fremantle. It may even be one of his worst teams. So there is a little bit of food for thought, and that's probably because the way Fremantle do play, do chip the ball away around, do like to bottle up the corridor, and will try to stop that orange tsunami, as it's called. So there is a little bit of a worry there. And the last game also for him is at Mars. Now, he did score 137 points at Mars last time. It can get windy out there. So if there's a lot of kick-ins, that'll obviously help Whitfield. And it's not really a great place for tall players. So, he could potentially score quite well down there. But, do-die match, do the doggies put some attention in him? So that is the worry. And I think Kai has just said that exact thing is, do they put a defensive forward on him? And that is the worry. And I think it maybe not as much this week with Freya, but I'm worried about it big time against the Dogs. So Whitfield is a little bit further down for me, as much as he's been going absolutely great guns, and he'll probably go decent again. But I just have a feeling that both coaches, especially Beveridge in that last round, is going to have something installed for him. So I'm trying to stay away from him. Geordie Clark, again, playing in that GWS game, hasn't scored well against GWS in the past, but you can't discount his second half of the year. It's now, let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tons in a row. So that's absolutely brilliant. I don't think he's got the high ceiling as the other guys, but a guy who's just super consistent. If you want to lock in, if your opposition is looking like you just need somebody who's going to score 100, Jordan Clark seems to be that player. So there's probably guys with better ceilings, but he's as solid as they come. And the last one, talking to a couple of Carlton supporters, which they made a great point. If you want a complete pod, Nick Newman's got to be looked at. He's a guy who does have a massive high ceiling, but he does drop low scores. But Sard being out, we know obviously no Doherty. They're literally shot this week with the amount of injuries that they have. So you would expect quite a bit of ball through that Carlton defence. Against the Collingwood just a couple of games ago, he did score a 144, scored a 156 against the Tigers, has put up a 147 and a 148 earlier in the season. So if you want a bit of a pod last game, needing to win your match, so potentially holding on to Sheasel and as long as you can to make that decision. And the good thing about that is because Sheasel does play on Sunday, so you may wait until the Saturday night games are gone if you're in a do or die league, and just have a look at where you're going. If you need the safety call, maybe then you trade to like the Sicily, but if you need somebody who you might need a 140 or 150 for, with that potential who could just go bananas, Nick Newman might be your player. So, just something a little bit food for thought. And it does depend on how you're playing. We always say that some people are still playing for overall. Some people at this time are playing for their leagues, and it's either grand final week or prelim week, depending on how your league's set up. So, very important there. If I'm ranking them, I'm really tossing between Sinclair and Sicily. I think they are the clear 1 and 2. Jordan Clark then for safety, Nick Newman for ceiling, and then I'd have Lockie Whitfield 5th of those lot. Outside of that, I don't think anyone else. And the question there, like some people are looking at holding Shees or maybe trying to bring in cover. Again, I don't think he plays next week. There's just no worth to risk him. What are North getting out of that game apart from pride by flying him down to Tassie to play that? So I'd rather hold Kerr now, because if Carlton need to win next week since the Saints, like last week, they'll just risk him and play him. So I'd rather just take that risk there. And hopefully if Sheetzel's not playing anyway, Fisher just continues to play. And, for those who have managed to hold him, he puts up some decent scores. All right. Yes, Kyle. So Sicily does have the best fixtures remaining out of the non-mids and ruck. Only problem is potential forward in round 24. And potential, but I think Sicily's just such a different player. And the great thing about Sicily compared to most others, he can go forward. And we know he can kick goals quite quick. So I'm not so worried about that, because, there's the potential he could just float down against Richmond or North and just do what he wants. We know North and Richmond's backline problems this year as well. So, it doesn't even worry me what end of the ground he could potentially end up at. All right, John, is it better to use my last trade now to cover Sheasel or wait and hold for the grand final next week? I'm in 6 prelim finals. So you're the extreme case where I just said there before. If you're in all these grand finals, I would not be going Sinclair. You're the perfect person to be looking at, say, Sicily. Have a look at where you sit come into Saturday night. So all the Saturday night games, you can wake up Sunday morning, have a good look through, see if you are winning or losing these grand finals. You might be ahead on a couple, you might be down in 4, but if you're in a situation where you're losing all 6, Sicily or Newman, you need to make the trade. If you're home and clear in at least 4 of them, well, you can potentially just hold and just take the loss, or hopefully you've got some sort of cover there. It is a situational thing, but I think you're a prime example of waiting to that Sunday matchup and just seeing where you're sitting. Potentially could go earlier and get Sinclair if you need be, but I think the longer you can hold and wait for that and see what just develops over your prelims, that's probably the best way to do it. And that's how I plan to do it myself. So I'll probably wait until halfway through Saturday, just have a look there, because at least then I've got 4 games. So I've kind of got an idea of how it's playing out. And if I'm looking all right in some, I'll just maybe hold off as long as possible. I'll still probably make the trade this week because I don't want to take the donut. But it just will have a look at Sinclair versus, maybe a Sicily type for me. Global with English, the Alpino out, yes, and also Cheese out. Who would you trade out with 1 trade left? Now, Global, it depends, obviously. If you're, and well, this changes everything. So you've actually said you're playing me. So, mate, I'd just hold English and take the donut personally. But no, it's. I gather you don't have any cover for both. If you've got cover for one, well, it's just obviously you trade the one that you don't have cover. But if you don't have cover, I think it probably becomes a tough one, because what's like Sicily, I feel like there's a bigger ceiling. I'm gathering you've probably already got Cherry. if you don't, like, the two best rucks have obviously been Gorn and Cherry this year, and that's kind of how it worked out. Some of these rucks are just really peaking at the right time. So you got no funds either. That does make it hard. That's one. I'm just trying to have a little look at where English is sitting, because the Sheezel one's easy because you can go to anyone. So that does make life a lot easier for you. In the case of a ruck, let's just go by highest price here, is Timmy English at only 531. So that makes it real hard, because if your second rucks, if you already got Grundy as your second ruck, like there's not really too many options to go to outside of, as you're saying, is going to Briggs, which, it's a shame you couldn't get up maybe to a Lloyd Meek, but he's still playing that Nank. Briggs, don't. Well, the least a good thing with Briggs, if English is not playing next week, that's he could have an absolute field day. So maybe that's not a bad option, but I still think maybe Sheezel probably down to like Sinclair Sicily's probably got more upside than what Briggsy probably does. So that would probably be the way I'd lean towards it. If I had to take a donut anywhere, I'd probably take it in the ruck in your case. If you had more funds and you were able to get to Cherry or Marshall or whatever, I'd say ruckman straight away, because you could get one of the gun ruckmans. But Briggsy's not a terrible ruck, he is prone for the odd mess score. And he's done it a few times this season. He puts up like a 60 or a 90 or an 80, and you're just like, even last week it was an 86. Like, what happens if he comes out this week against Freo and just puts up another 90, where potentially you could be getting a defender who can easily go 110, 120. So in Sicily's case, as we've said, his last 3 games have been 140 against a Richmond, so a 140 plus. So that's the way I would be going. So I'd rather try to beat you on merit. So try to get your best player in. I think that's probably the way to go, mate. So I appreciate that question, but it does bring it in. Like, if you do have English and you've got the money to obviously upgrade him, that's I think you've got to go Tristan Cherry if you don't have him. Well done to all those who have brought him in. Really, it was a bonus for those who did trade Gorn to him at the time, because he's been absolutely fine the last 3 weeks. Really making the call for him to, it's going to be hard not to stop him next year, start him next year. He's probably going to finish on an average of around that 120 mark. We're going to have to pay up big for him. Well done to who I'm trying to think. Actually, it was their coaches panel did put it up earlier this year. They were very big on starting Cherry. I think I was sort of really frustrated at the fact that Grundy did so well in that early ground, because I was playing around with having Cherry in the team, and what a set and forget player he was. So well done for those who have been on him all year. And unfortunately, those who haven't had him, like myself, at any point, it's been pretty frustrating. But thank you. Well done, MJ, coaches panel, because I know you were so much on him. Global, I'm sure you were listening to that. And I think people might remember back to when I was sort of talking about this at the start of the year. I was sort of really debating that. And that round 0, some of those decisions, just because of that round 0, are really frustrating now. In hindsight, everything in hindsight. Kyle, Newman's run in terms of points difference is still very good, even after the last 2 rounds we had. So somebody, as I said, I don't mind Newman. West Coast, that's a real 50-50 game, but just more the fact that the Blues have got so many inexperienced players in. You're going to have a look at those main players are going to have to take the workload. And I could definitely see, like, they might change the game style a little bit. It might be a little bit more possession football, just because, the young fellas are going to get tired at different points. So wouldn't surprise me late in the game. Carlton, they might have to try to hold on the ball late in quarters, just to help these young fellas get through. So if that's the case, you can see Newman just picking up some easy mark kicks situations. So as I said, I do like him as a potential person with a big ceiling, and do like him much better than, say, a Whitfield for this week. Global, 100%. You're right. So many learnings this year. I think the hard thing has been, like, having those extra trades and probably taking more risk, and then some of those risks haven't obviously worked out. Just trying to be aggressive. I think that learning around sort of that round 0 the more and more like you sort of reflect on it, the more idea that we probably should have not, probably started as many of those guys who had early buys, but that's the way it sort of goes. And yeah, there's been some players this year have definitely put up their hand and showed us, the changing of the guard. And it'll be even more interesting next year with the sort of how the forward line shapes up again. All right, Corey, who do I trade out of Kernell or English? Yes, we haven't covered Charlie Kernell yet. So if you're in a situation where you've dodged Sheasel, which is probably highly unlikely because most people have Sheasel or an English, and you've got Kernell, the options are a little bit thin, especially if you're in a case where you have no money. And that's definitely a situation for some people out there. So yeah, Kernell around that. What's he 390 now? Apologize for everyone who jumped on that. That's turned into an absolute disastrous pick, which has been really frustrating. Probably the one that I kind of really like from there is just Matt Kennedy. Again, Blues player. A couple of people, I had him in draft and I was trying to sell him early in the year, and kind of glad I held on to him because he's had a couple of down games, but he's a guy that can easily go 100, and though he probably has to play a bit more forward this week, we know he's obviously got the ability to run through the midfield as a big body and get onto the scoreboard, and I think he definitely can do that again this week. So went the 119 last week. In regards to anybody else around that price, it does get a bit hard. This is why it's probably easier to sort of trade other people. I hope you've got kind of cover, because there's not like a whole lot of people outside of going like a massive pod. So maybe like a Kasaya Pickett, because Oliver is out this week. We showed what he could do in the midfield last week with the 122. Couple tough games for the Suns and the Pies, but Port's a tough opponent, and he has scored 122 twice this year when he's been given that midfield opportunity. So that's just a bit of a left one you could potentially take a punt on. The other ones, like in a perfect world, you're trying to get some sort of Hawk player in there. Just the issue with that is there's not a lot putting a hand up. Like, do I really check? Say Jack Jennifer. If you had a little bit of money, like Connor McDonald's not the worst shout. Again, Richmond, North Melbourne, he has put up a couple of tons lately. You did have that poor game against the Giants, but there were reasons for that. But in 3 of those other games, 109, 116, and 88. So you could do probably worse than say a Connor McDonald with that sort of draw. Maybe that's somebody that you can consider out if you don't obviously have the other issues that everyone else is dealing with. In regards to which one you should go, as I said earlier, if you had to rank them, you're trading out Sheasel first because you can potentially get the best player, and I think you only have 3K either way. So as I said, I think it was in the Global earlier about trading trading for Briggs. It's like, would you rather Briggs in your side this week, or would you rather a Sicily or a Sinclair? Like, I'd rather take the defender, so that's how I'd be going. But you do say, as have a Hall for cover for Sheasel, so then it becomes Kernell or English, so then you want the more expensive one. So English to probably Briggs is your best bet, because the options for forward, it's only really Connor McDonald. And I don't even know, can you actually get there? It was 3, what's he now? Charlie Kernell. Let's have a look at 395. So you can't even get up to him. So what are the other options apart from going down? So I think it's got to be that ruck situation for your Cause. And Cause also went on and said, I had 2K more. Went Caldwell at the time for Fisher. Frustrating. As Global said, so many learnings. Kyle, I didn't like Zeri because there wasn't a bottom out option below him. We've restructured, and that's it. The people who did take the risk this year, and probably safety is probably the thing next year. These things go in waves, so that's the hard thing. Everybody who took the risk this year with Yo, Cherry, there's a few others, paid off. Next year, probably everyone jumps on the risk strategy, and those guys go injured. I think that was prime me 2017 and 18. So took a lot of risk in 2017. Was inside the top 50 after the buys, continued to take risks. A couple of them got injured, didn't pay off. Trying to have a crack to try to get inside that top 10. I think I finished that year, 250 of 300th. Continued to take risks. Then the year after went the same strategy and bombed absolutely completely. because it was definitely safety first in 2018 with some of the starting selections and safety in numbers. So that's the way it goes. So yeah, something to definitely think about that. I do like this also from you, Kyle. Pickett, has a good run, to be honest, or Waterman. Like Waterman could potentially, like we saw what he did to Richmond earlier this year. So, but the thing is, Carlton's defenders, it's not like I don't know. I was going to say we. I shouldn't say we. But it's not like their biggest issue is their forward line this week, the Blues. But they've still got some pretty good defenders lying around. Wiedering's probably going to go Scallon. You've got McGovern down there, still got Newman. So they're going to probably, they've still got some decent midfielders, Cripps, Walsh, Hewitt. So it's not like it's going to be floodgates for West Coast. I think Waterman can still have a good game and kick 2 or 3 goals. But I'm not expecting that. The issue for Carlton is who's going to kick their goals. Like, it's going to be a big reliance on sort of alternating between sort of Cripps, Kennedy, getting some of those bigger bodies down there to support, because realistically it's all the smalls. They don't have any other tools down there. Where Pickett, on the other hand, it's just like you look at that Melbourne midfield, and as much as I expect them to probably get smashed up against the Suns midfield this week, Suns midfield at home is just dynamic. Like, if you have escaped all carnage this week and you just had a spare trade up your sleeve, get on Noah Anderson. Noah Anderson might be the top scoring player for the round, this round. But yeah, like I think the D's going to go, they're going to have Viney in there with Rivers, and then it's going to probably be Sparrow. They're going to have to put Cozzy Pickett. And then they're probably going to throw a couple other, maybe a little young Tholstrup, Neil Bullen. It's a little thin. It's real thin. So that is an issue in itself. I think Cozzy Pickett, just at that price, if you had to trade Curnow to somebody. Kai was about to say it would be a very wet game tonight, but luckily they're playing in Melbourne because the NRL, you can barely see the game. The rain is that bad. That's interesting. Big watch on the GWS game tomorrow. And there's another thing for, say, Whitfield, Clark. If it's really wet up there, it's probably not as great for their running game. Interesting to see how that kind of plays out. Say, maybe it could be potentially good for the kickouts, but you find sometimes with these really wet games, goal kicking magically actually comes quite good. Like, teams all of a sudden, like you probably said tomorrow, like half time, they might have only kicked like 6 goals each or 5 goals, but it'll be like 6-3 to 5-2. It always just seems to be in these wet games where you get these dry games under the roof tonight, like Essendon last week, and all of a sudden teams kick 9 behinds in a row. Like, it actually doesn't make sense. That like it should be the other way around, but probably be one of those games where people will be like, yes, cool, Luke Ryan, all these guys are going to get kickouts, and it just doesn't happen. It just seems how to go. Whitfield, watch him lay 8 tackles. He probably will lays 8 tackles and gets like 150 points for it. So that's the way. So it kind of goes. In regards to vice captain and captains this week, maybe it's a kind of a little safe, but like I do like Flanders. Like that Melbourne midfield is just, it's not great. So Flanders, Miller, Anderson. I think Anderson's probably the real beneficiary this week, but potentially do Melbourne sort of kind of try to target him more than maybe Flanders, thinking like, we know like he could just cause so much damage. But if they don't put any attention to Anderson, he's going 150 this week. So I feel like Flanders could still go 130 potentially with a big game. So he's the one that I really like. More than probably a couple of the other options going around. The showdowns in here, it's a hard one just because as much as Port should win this game, Adelaide do have the wood on them come showdowns, and stranger things that happen. So I just kind of want to stay away from that game. The only other one there, the Bulldogs North. I think that's just the Monty Bont this week. The guy's just flying. They need a win. They'll rebound after last week, and unfortunately, North Melbourne are the one in their way. So without Sheasel in there as well, I think they should have a bit of a field day. The North boys. The lucky last one with that, if you probably wanted a real left field and you wanted to bring in, say, Sicily, it's a massive risk. It's just a shame that he's not playing early in the round, because if he was playing early in the round, I'd probably jump on him. If you're a person who just likes locking in Friday night games, it's a hard one to predict who Sydney will put time in. I mean, Essendon will put time in tonight. Do they go Gordon or do they go Heaney? I'm expecting probably more Goulden just because Perkins is coming in. I'm not really thinking Perkins is a massive ball winner. So he probably has to go and try to run around with Goulden. So I wouldn't be surprised if Heaney kind of got off the chain a bit, but I feel like tonight's sort of the guys just going kind of that 120, 125 mark. I don't feel like some player's going to really blow out the water and score like massive. So I'd rather just avoid that game completely. And pick up from that Gold Coast game more than anything. Pies Lions could be interesting. Like it's hard to ignore Lockie Neal. Does Dunks and Neal just run head to head? Like who does Crisp go in there and give attention? It's always hard to pick which one they sort of go to. It's usually probably Neal more than what a Dunkley would be. And we do the thing with Neal, like teams keep him down till half time and then he just explodes. Doesn't usually have a couple bad games in a row. The other one there, in that Lions game, if you wanted a sneaky vice captain, you've got to have a look at Zorko. As much as he's not at the Gabba this week, but he just runs around and does his own little thing. So I wouldn't be surprised me if he comes out and sort of gets his 30 kicks from the defense as always, and you can never ignore Dacos. I don't mind that game. I think potentially there could be somebody stand up out of that one. But I think a lot of us will be taking the Bulldogs, definitely. And the one I haven't obviously mentioned is because I don't have him, but if you have Tristan Cherry and you want to go against Bont, I think you've got to go Cherry because Darcy is young fella. He'll be looking to rebound from what he kicked last week. 1 goal, 5 from 7 shots. But playing ruck against probably the most informed ruck in the competition, that's going to be huge. So, lock in Tristan Cherry if you have him. I think that's about it, guys. So, all the best coming up. Hopefully we finish off strong and get some prelims results and we get into the grand final. Once again tonight, guys, for those who haven't, I might even put up a code too for our Supercoach Insider League that we can all join if those who are interested in Fantasy Premier League. But so the lockout for that is coming up very soon, Australian time, 3:30 a.m. And I know I'm talking to quite a few other content creators. I've been playing with my team non-stop. It's always great. Like, it doesn't matter what fantasy competition, Supercoach, fantasy, any sport. That start of the season is always the best time because you're always playing around. If you get off to a great start, it just obviously piques your interest. And the thing I love about Premier League is they do have the wild card option. And I really hope Supercoach do consider it at some point because we do know obviously there is the drop off in Supercoach and all our our team discussion. I think it would add something to it completely different if potentially come the halfway mark or the second half of the year, you could activate a wild card and completely change your team because those people have done really good. It's just a new strategy where you've managed to increase your cash and have a lot more to spend. You're able to put it to good use. And sort of those players, that we've had who have been dead rookies for us, and we can't sort of move and we get stuck. We can obviously fix those situations. It's a win for Supercoach, and I think just something a bit different. But that's me on that, and I'm sure we can discuss all the options last year later once the year's finished. But so that guys, good luck, and I will talk soon. See you. Bye.